Fantasy football waiver wire players to target. So we got the week 11 waiver wire. Let's just try to do the two name thing and clean it up a little bit after that. Quarterbacks. Why don't you give me one that you like?
Well, it's obviously got to be Taysom Hill. Like if he wasn't claimed in your leagues, and I think not just as a tight end, he's pretty much a must start as a quarterback right now too. We talk about it. You run the ball. Timmy Tebow, he scored them fantasy points. He couldn't pass. He was an ass passer too. So
Yeah.
hey, you run the ball. You're a fantasy starting quarterback.
I still like Tua. Dalton, who we talked about weeks ago, showing a little bit of signs of life with Dallas. I mean, I don't love anybody outside of this week. Derek Carr is available on waivers for a lot of people. I like the matchup for the Raiders. Who are they playing again? Oh, the Atlanta Falcons. That's probably my favorite kind of plug-in. Plus, he's playing well enough to play forward. Phillip Rivers is another one as well. He's just playing so well lately. You got any more you want to mention?
Yeah, we got to preface it with the fact that this is just an awful, awful, horrible waiver week. There's
It
just
is.
nothing out there. It's brutal. So don't get too excited about this episode, this little waiver wire segment, because we're gonna pitch guys who are probably deeper league acts, and that's
Yeah.
guys like Phillip Rivers, who we talked about earlier. The passing attempts are way up: 33, 44, 33, 43, 39, and 36 attempts last 6 games after having less than 30 in 3 of the first 4. He's got 3, 3, 1, and 3 passing touchdowns. His last 4 playable matchups obviously weren't playing him against Baltimore.
Right.
Then he faces Tennessee, Houston, Las Vegas, Houston the next 4 weeks. All great matchups, and they're all basically weatherproof matchups. We don't have to worry about, some of these other late season guys who might have a good matchup that's in a terrible weather condition. So I
Sure.
think Phillip Rivers is going way under the radar. He's the 32nd most rostered quarterback in ESPN right now, which is unbelievable.
Don't think of Phillip Rivers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars from week 1, David. Rivers is really putting on a display in the last couple of weeks. He's acclimated to the offense and all that stuff, so it's good. Running backs, you got any on the list that you like?
Wayne
I have
Gallman.
I have one. I have one for you that I know you're gonna like.
Why
James
don't you go
White.
first?
He's available in 70%, bro. 70%. Rex Burkhead out for the season. James White, they're going to wheel him back out. He's going to play. McKissick still available. Gallman, I like you mentioned.
I
Devontae
like
Booker.
Gallman. I like Gallman more than White just because Gallman is the guy. He's the workhorse for the Giants right now. Where White, we still don't know any given week if they're just going to say, hey, we're going to lean on Cam Newton and Damian Harris in the run this week, and we're not going to get you involved. Because that still happens. Even without Burkhead,
Yeah.
who knows? Sony Michel's back, The Patriots, they can find ways to just frustrate us, and every time we think, oh, running back's a good play, he might not be. So I like Gallman more than White. I still think Ahmed,
Yeah.
he faces the Jets this week, Cincinnati next week. Even if we get Myles Gaskin back the following week, he's
Right.
probably not going to play a full snap count full week.
Yep, agreed. And McKissick, I think I mentioned, but he's still available in enough leagues, and if you're in a PPR league, he gets a lot of targets. And White, I would only pick up in a PPR league,
I
specifically.
think carry on too. We're talking about how brutal these matches are. In fact,
Right.
I'm talking about carry on Johnson. Faces Houston. He got the receiving work. If DeAndre Swift misses another game, it's a Thanksgiving Day matchup. We know crazy stuff happens on Thanksgiving sometimes. Houston matchup could be a lot of points. I think carry on's got some potential as a spot start.
Yep. Well, let's move on to wide receiver, who, if you're looking for, flex plays and all that, I'm looking at wide receiver this week and less about running back. I like White as a flex, James White, because of that consolidation we are just talking about. But in terms of wide receiver, I'm going to say it again. He leads my list at wide receiver again is Michael Pittman Jr. I think you should have picked him up a couple weeks ago. Didn't have a great game in terms of catches yesterday, but did get in the end zone, so he still had a nice score. Going back to that Tennessee matchup where he kind of broke out. So I like him quite a bit. What about you?
He's at the top of my list as well. Right below that, I have Jalen Reagor, who I've cooled on a little bit, but I still believe in Jalen Reagor. I still believe he can provide value in a redraft format this year. He's been decent, hasn't had the blow up game, but he has had a very solid floor when, especially exclude his first ever game, only 1 reception, 55 yards. He's been, I believe, up above 8 fantasy points in every single game. I believe he had 9 this past week. He gets Seattle. You get Seattle this week, guys. If there's a matchup to target, it's obviously Seattle. They've also been burned by slot receivers. Jalen Reagor, he's going to get a little bit more in the slot. And if, we talked about it before, if Jalen Hurts comes in and replaces Carson Wentz, we don't know that he's not going to be a better passer. And I know he's not known as being a passer. He's been known as more as being a scrambler. Carson Wentz has been brutal. We talked about it. More games with 2 interceptions thrown than games without 2 interceptions thrown. The yardage has not been very high for him the past few weeks. He's been decent as a fantasy quarterback. But if Jalen Hurts comes in, who knows? Maybe he prefers Jalen Reagor to Travis Fulgham. Who knows? I think Reagor's got by far the most upside of any wide receiver that's still widely available.
Other guys I like, Corey Davis is back at around the 50% line for some reason. I like Corey Davis. Cole Beasley, people forget about him on the bye week, but he's been really consistent, especially if you're a PPR. You could probably slot or flex him out. Tim Patrick, who we talked about, he's available in a ton of leagues. He's very consistent. Again, like if you need a flex play, you're looking for some consistency there. These guys are going to get you, about 10 points a game, and could, if getting in the end zone, could get you a little bit more. Anybody else on your list there?
I'll just say, if you're picking up any of these guys and you're a playoff team, congrats to you for making the playoffs and needing some of these guys, because wow, if you're going into the playoffs with them. I have Denzel Mims listed, who's had 4 for 42, 2 for 42, 4 for 62, and 3 for 71 in his first 4 games. He gets Seattle week 14. Again, if Denzel Mims is your starter in week 14 and you're in the playoffs, congrats to you. You did a heck of a job managing your team.
Yeah.
But that's really all that's out there, guys. There's not a whole lot left on the waiver wire.
Hey, we've been talking for weeks about how we love the waiver wire. Say pick up some of these guys. A lot of people listened or just independently picked them up because it's a little paltry this week. I like the defense finally, but everybody else. But let's talk about tight end. Again, he's right at about the 60-ish% line, but Dallas Goedert gets in the end zone. He's there. Robert Tonyan, Dalton Schultz are interesting. Anybody you like?
You named them. It's clear at this point. It's because the only tight ends who make the list are the only ones who actually caught the ball this past week. To make a list, you just look, who had a catch at tight end? Oh, he had a catch, he had a catch, he had a catch, and he had a catch. That's 4 of them. That's about it. I had Tonyan as well. Tonyan, I should say, who he's returned a little bit. We don't know how much that ankle injury was hindering him for a few weeks there. He's got upside. He's got touchdown upside, and he's got one of the highest ceilings of any tight end. So when you're taking chances here, we're getting down into fantasy playoffs. You want that ceiling.
Yep.
You want to play to win, and Robert Tonyan is that guy that can help you play to win. A guy who's a little bit safer if you have a better all-around roster and you're not really relying on your tight end to score you a ton of points. It's that guy you mentioned before. That would be Dalton Schultz. Mm-hmm. Right now, he is a top 12 tight end. He's a tight end 1, but he's only rostered in 25% of leagues. Talk about how he hasn't been negatively affected by that quarterback change nearly as much as Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Ezekiel Elliott have. He's got 4 for 35, 2 for 22, 6 for 53, 4 for 48, and then 4 for 25 and a touchdown this past week against Minnesota. So he's been decent, minus that 2 for 22 against Washington. He's got you at least 7.5 PPR fantasy points, which doesn't sound crazy for any other position, but for the tight end, it can get the job done. And then he's also got Cincinnati week 14, so that's a big playoff matchup that he can probably help get you through that first round.
We also talked about Indianapolis tight ends, whoever your favorite one is for that week, especially against Tennessee this week. I think they have a chance to get you in the end zone. Defense and special teams, unlike the last couple of weeks, I actually like 2 of the matchups here, but why don't you lead with your first?
I'll be honest. I skip the defense and special teams every week because I don't include them in my waiver wire article. So it always takes to the end of the episode here, like, oh yeah, shoot, we're doing special teams and defense. So I'll let you take it away on this one, and I'll let you own this section.
Two prime matchups to stream this week if you need to stream defense. New York Giants coming off a bye week. New York Giants' strength of their team is the defense, and they have a Cincinnati Bengals team who is going to their backup quarterback, and it's the Bengals. Even when they go to the backup quarterback, they're going to be throwing the ball 50 times because that's what they do. A lot of chances for turnovers there, a lot of chances for sacks, even if they give up points, and I don't think the Bengals will score that many points. Even if they give up points, the Giants will be able to make it up more on those things. And we also mentioned before, we got the New Orleans Saints versus the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos aren't the sexiest offensive team. With Drew Brees out, that defense, man, they have talent. Their big issue is they don't always step up and play. to their ability. But with Breeze out, we saw it last year with Bridgewater quarterback. We saw it yesterday with Taysom Hill at quarterback. They'll play. You'll get sacks. They'll make the team one-dimensional, which means Drew Lock's going to have to throw the ball. They're not going to get a lot to run. So they're, again, sacks and interceptions. Two teams off the waiver wire that you could start, and actually they could be difference makers on your team this week if you need a win. So that's all I got.
Let me hit on that, because now that I look at some of the matchups, this is a great week to be in the stream defense group and not one of those guys who has like a Steelers Baltimore who's just kind of stuck plugging them in. And then to say that's a bad thing, but there are a lot of good matchups this week. You already mentioned some of them, but I'll talk about the Browns. They face Jacksonville, who Luton just threw 4 interceptions. We know they're going to run the ball, slow that game down, limit the amount of plays Jacksonville can run. You talked about the Saints against Denver. Talk about the Giants against Cincinnati. Giants have been an underrated defense this year. Ryan Lindley, he ain't it. Yeah. He ain't it for sure. So there's going to be some points for the Giants defense to score there. Talk about the Cardinals defense. Cam Newton, he's hit or miss, and if he's miss, they fall behind against the Cardinals and they have to pass their way back into it. That's going to mean some sacks, possibly some turnovers, some interceptions. I think they're a nice stream this week. Packers against Chicago. Talk about how bad Chicago offense. They're another good stream. We have down a little bit further. We have even the Cowboys against Washington. We'll see. I like both of those teams. Washington completely destroyed them the first one, but I think the Cowboys even had a decent game the first time. Then if you go down a little bit further, Texans in Detroit, Bengals against Giants. It could be both of those defense play well. So you got a lot of options if you're streaming this week.
Yep, agreed. It's a long episode, David, but we had 16 games and it's crunch time, so we gotta talk about it. I think that calls it. I think that's a show. You got anything else to talk about with the crowd before we head out?
Please, good Lord, let the Ravens win this week. I'm begging you.
Make it a happy Thanksgiving.
Let Marquise Brown score at least. Give me one or the other. Give me one or the other.
Everybody out there, hey, man, stay safe. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you again next week. Playoff season, baby. We got to get there. Talk to you then. Thanks, everyone.